a number of you have asked me how exactly do you go about integrating or mainstreaming gender considerations. As we know, this is requirement by many donors, many funders. They want to see how are you advancing this agenda of gender equality. And so it's important that as we write our proposals, that we are able to bring out these aspects, these considerations in a strong way. So when we talk of gender mainstreaming, what exactly do we mean? So gender mainstreaming is a process of incorporating gender perspectives in our programs, in our project activities. So it entails making women's and men's concerns and experiences a part and parcel of our project. And every stage of the project, be it planning, at the design stage, at the implementation, during monitoring and evaluation, we need to be conscious of how we ensure that the men's and women's experiences are taken into consideration. So in short, that is what gender mainstreaming is. And because I focus more on proposal writing, I'm going to try and bring it out in a setup of where you're writing a proposal. So as we design our projects, there are some concepts that are important for us to understand. And I would like to introduce these few concepts very quickly. One concept of gender blind, it's important to understand what you need to be conscious or to be gender aware and not gender blind. And so basically what means for projects that are gender blind are projects that do not take gender considerations into perspectives. As you design your projects, you do not take any time to think through how women and men experience different issues, be it economically, social issues, political issues, different responsibilities at home, in the communities. We experience things very differently. And so it's important that these issues are taken, or these dynamics are taken into consideration. So we do not want to be gender blind. And I believe that is why we are here today, because we want to understand how to ensure that we are gender aware and, if possible, and also gender responsive. So the next step is being gender aware. It's important. This is the starting point of you being able to respond accordingly. And basically, when we say you are gender aware, it means that these programs deliberately examine and address the anticipated gender-related outcomes during design and implementation. So the projects need to deliberately, it's very intentional, You need to take time to put into considerations the gender dynamics and how they play out, and how this is likely to impact your project and your project outcomes. The other concept that is important for us to understand is what we call the exploitative gender programs. So we also want to be careful that our projects do not end up exploiting or making gender inequalities worse than even we found them in our communities. So these are programs that intentionally or unintentionally reinforces or takes advantage of the gender inequalities and stereotypes in pursuit of their project outcomes. And this can happen, it happens, and many times unintentionally, and that is why it's important to be very deliberate and take some time to make sure that your approaches are not harmful, they are not undermining either men or women within the community, and that in no way are you advancing the gender inequalities in our communities. And an example to just give you a perspective would be a program that, focuses solely on providing training and resources for income-generating activities to male members of the community. So, a program may, for one reason or another, just focus on men only within the community, maybe equip them with skills on income generation and all that, without taking into consideration the role of women in these communities and the dynamics and their contribution to the economic activity. So such an assumption could end up being, advancing, or basically is going to advance the gap between the men and women in terms of economics within that community, and continue to, exacerbate or to fuel this idea that only men should perhaps be targeted for economic related activities. So for whatever reason that you may have, it's important that you in mind remember to always consider all the genders as you plan or design and implement your projects. Now, then we have what we call accommodating gender programs. So we have programs that acknowledge the differences or acknowledge the inequalities around that exist within our community. However, they do not put any deliberate actions to address these inequalities. So although this approach may result in short-term benefits and the realization of outcomes of the project, it does not attempt in any way to reduce the gap between the two genders or to reduce gender inequality or to challenge any dynamics that may be detrimental or that we are not in support of gender equality or gender equity. So it's important as a project that you examine yourself and ask yourself, are you accommodative? Are you a program that is just accommodating, doing nothing, not challenging any gender dynamics, any norms, any social activities or experiences that may be advancing the idea of gender inequalities? So you come in and you just ignore that and you accommodate, you recognize that, but you do nothing about it. And a good example could be a program that decides to conduct separate outreach sessions for men and women to discuss reproductive health issues, family planning, disease prevention, and such. So this project is aware of the gender dynamics that maybe men and women should not be put together. They should not be, they should be addressed separately, and that's what maybe the community or the dynamics within that community, that is what they propose. So you go ahead and have two separate kind of approaches, one directed to men and another one directed to women. Yet we know, especially issues around reproductive health, there are issues that concern both parties, both men and women, and therefore they need to come together and discuss the issues together if at all you're going to have impactful and lasting change. So while this program accommodates existing gender norms, they respect the gender norms and expectations, it doesn't challenge or even attempt to shift these norms. And so that's why we say that this is it's an accommodating gender program. And it's important to examine yourself to see where you are at, if you are gender accommodating. The other key concept you need to understand is what we call the transformative gender programs. Now, this is where we want to be. This is where we want to work towards. So these are gender programs, programs that seek to transform the relations, to promote equality and achieve program objectives. So intentionally, these projects are here to try and address the challenges, the gender inequalities that exist within our community, and challenge both men and women to address them, challenge our systems. Yes, and so they promote gender equality by, one, fostering critical examination of inequalities and gender roles, norms, and dynamics. For you to be able to address these inequalities, you need to examine them. And this is where it's important to conduct what we call a gender analysis, for you to understand the gender roles within the community, the norms, the dynamics, ownership of property within the community, and all that. And there are many frameworks that have been used are there or out there to explain this gender analysis. So as a project, this is your starting point, understanding the gender inequalities. And then the next step is recognizing and strengthening the positive norms that support equality and an enabling environment. So once you understand the gender norms and inequalities, then you want to see, is there anything that is positive that we can use as a project to perhaps, reinforce this concept? So a good example could be, in many of our African societies, there's a lot of togetherness or mutual support for each other. People like coming together, celebrating weddings and social events together. So that's a strong aspect that you can actually use even to promote your idea, encourage within your project the idea of them coming together, and then use some of those avenues, maybe perhaps to educate the community about gender inequalities and how they can empower women and how they can support each other. So it's a norm that you can reinforce and use it to your advantage to transform the gender dynamics. And of course, promoting the relative position of women, girls, and marginalized groups. So trying to work towards really transforming, promoting the position of women within the community, recognizing their contribution, and making it very clear to all structures within the community. For example, ensuring women are involved in decision-making in the community committees. Maybe if it's a WASH program, you want to make sure women are represented in the water user committee. So they are part of the decision-making of what is happening within their communities. At household level, we want to promote decision-making by both parties. And so that is the purpose, or that is what, as a project, you need to be aiming at achieving, transforming the gender dynamics in our communities in the aim of achieving gender equality and, of course, women empowerment. So I just thought of sharing this. You can check out this, what we call the gender integration continuum. It's important for you to understand this as you design your project. Before you start writing the project, it's important that you understand the concepts I've shared. And this framework actually helps us to ask ourselves, where are we? To help us to keep evaluating ourselves as projects, as programs. Are we gender blind? Are we gender aware? And are we in any way exploitative, or are we accommodating or transformative? So the goal is to be transformative, and by being transformative, then we'll be able to achieve the goal of, it's a key international goal of gender equality and better development outcomes. So now with that, I want us to look at how exactly do you then bring these aspects? How do they practically come out in our proposals? Because what I've realized is many of us actually do understand that we need to be gender transformative, but exactly how do you go about it when you are writing your proposal, and how do you bring it out so that the donor can actually appreciate that you understand these concepts? So there are 3 areas for me where I usually am very keen on when it comes to gender, mainstreaming gender. When you're doing a problem analysis, I keep saying that you need, before you start your proposal writing, you need to understand your problem well, you need to define it. And there's usually a tool I promote, basically conducting problem analysis using the problem tree analysis tool. I think I have discussed it in one of my videos. I'll check and leave a link below. But during the problem analysis, this is where you need to ensure that intentional gender dynamics are also discussed, looking at how each of the problems that you wish to address actually also, how do women and men actually experience these problems. Then at the point of doing your strategies, again, this is a key area to ensure your activities or your proposed strategies to integrate gender. And of course, in monitoring and evaluation, we want to ensure that we have gender responsive M&E systems. So let's look at the project problem. How exactly do you go about bringing out gender issues within your problem statement? So the questions you ask yourself is, how do men and women experience the problem? And to help you do this, I recommend that you put together a team, your proposal development team, different stakeholders, people who understand the community, your target audience, some of it. So sit down together and ask yourself, how do men and women experience these problems? For me, I like doing it during the design workshops with my clients, invite different people, come together and discuss point by point, and I'll show you practically using an Excel sheet how you do that. Then the questions you're also going to ask yourself is, are there social norms and beliefs that influence how the problem is experienced by the different genders? Maybe there are some dynamics within the community, some beliefs that, makes it, for example, when we say that maybe women are responsible for taking care of children, that's a normal, I believe, in many societies, and that has many other implications, as you will see when you'll be discussing. Yes, so project problem again. So interrogate each problem and identify gender implications and brainstorm with a team of stakeholders so that you make sure you capture as many points as possible. Once you have done that, then the next stage is when you look at your strategies, you design your strategies, of course, based on the problem that you want to address and the objectives that you want to achieve. And at this stage, again, it involves assessing the implications for women and men of any planned project activity. So for each and every strategy, each and every activity that you have to ask yourself, what are the possible implications on women or on men if we take up this activity? And then the other component will be the M&E, like I said. When we're coming up with your M&E plan, again, you have to ask yourself, are we able to measure the impact of the project on both men and women? Can you show actually the differences that because you could do a project, but it had greater impact on men and did not have an impact on women. So it's important that our M&E systems, again, are gender responsive and they're able to collect data that is segregated. And again, we look at it practically. So allow me now and show you using an Excel sheet how you can lead your team or you can be able to integrate mainstream gender. Let's have a look at how you can practically come up with gender considerations that you're going to integrate within your project. So when you're writing your problem statement, once you've done your problem analysis and you have identified the core issues that you want to address, you list those issues in an Excel sheet, and this is just a sample. So this is a sample of a WASH program. So let's say some of the problems are specific. Remember, we said your problem has to be very specific. So some of your very specific problems in this community is one, that the nearest water point is located 10 kilometers away. Then the community has poor sanitation facilities in school. So the schools, the latrines are dilapidated. There are no hand washing facilities. And then in the community, they practice open defecation. So there are no latrines, for example, or perhaps. So you list, like I said, this is just an example. So you list down your problem, as many as they are, list them on one side. Then the next, on the other side, you're going to ask yourself, what are the gender implications? And you're going to take some time and just think through, what does it mean when we say that the water is located, the water point, the nearest water point is located 10 kilometers away? How does this affect women? How does this affect men? And when you think through it, then whatever you come across that is important, that is critical, then you note it down. And just as an example, when we talk of a water point being located 10 kilometers away, what this means is that women and girls, who are usually the ones responsible for fetching water, are going to be taking a lot of time on the road, a lot of time look in search of water, and this is going to reduce their time maybe available for taking care of children. You may find this would actually really affect the nutrition of the children, because then they have no time to take care of their children. So that is an implication. We are not saying it has no impact on men, but we can clearly see that women, in a very specific way, they are affected because they are the ones who are responsible, usually in many communities. Like I say, depending on the community, of course, but assuming in this community, you couldn't find the ones who are responsible. Like we know in Africa, it's common for fetching water, and therefore that has an implication. As they go to fetch water in walk long distances, they are at risk of sexual harassment, sexual harassment. I don't need to explain by who, but depending on where, again, the water point is located, it could be located in a place that is not safe for women and girls. So those are some of the considerations that you can bring out as you write your problem statement. When it comes to sanitation, what you could think about in schools, when the schools do not have proper sanitation, one of the impact it has on girls is that the girls do not have a private space for changing their pants during menstruation. We know it's a key thing, and so you can discuss a lot around this because chances are that their latrines are not friendly, they're not girl friendly, and that again poses even risks of health risks to the girls, hygiene issues. They're not able to observe menstrual hygiene because of poor sanitation. So again, that has to be discussed properly within your problem statement. Within the community, when women have to go and when people have to go and look for spaces to defecate within, to defecate, in many cases, they end up going to the bushes. And again, we know that women and girls are at higher risk of abuse or even sexual harassment. It also deprives them of their dignity, hygiene concerns. So there's a lot you can explain around how that this has an impact on women, and bring it out clearly within your project, within your problem statement. And I hope with that, that gives you an idea of how exactly to go about integrating or mainstreaming gender issues within your problem statement. Now let's go to the next step. So see the same example again. Let's look at strategies that have been proposed by this project. So let's say one of the strategies is to sink a borehole near the community so that we reduce the distance that the community members have to take to fetch water. So the question we ask ourselves then, what are some of the key gender considerations again that we need to put in mind, knowing that in view of the problems that we discussed above? So when you're sinking a borehole, some of the gender considerations could be, you need to be very careful of the location. The location should be a space, in a place that is not so far away from the community, and most importantly, a place where both men and women feel safe when they are going to fetch water. And especially women, since we know they are the ones who are going to be more involved in fetching water. So, and that means that women needs to be involved during the community stakeholders sessions when you are introducing this topic or this project to the community, when we are selecting the site where the borehole is going to be located. Women needs to be involved, so then they're able to voice and say, we don't feel comfortable here for whatever reason. There's some things that may not be only them can explain. They need to be involved in the water management committees. They need to be part of the teams that are making decisions. There needs to be consideration for lighting, so that when women and girls are fetching water, if it gets late, then they also feel safe. So those are some of the things that needs to be considered. Consideration even for fencing the water points, putting air fencing, having security guns, if possible, whether it's by the community, having the community, the men even taking turns to guard their women and girls to make sure that they are safe. And all these considerations can be very transformative and change how people look at some of these things in the community. When it comes to building of latrines in the schools, we are saying that then we need to make sure that the latrines that we are proposing, the latrines for the boys and the girls are not going to be the same. For the boys, they will take care of the boys' need, the urinals and all that, but also for the girls specifically, they need to be to promote menstrual hygiene. So we need latrines that have private space away from the boys. They have private spaces for changing. They have means of disposing sanitary pants, especially if it's a toilet. There's a washroom where if a girl in school messes their clothes or their uniform, they can change, they can clean themselves up and such like. So those are the considerations that you need to bring in. And also, of course, remembering the need to really educate the community. Even when you're talking about, for example, menstrual health hygiene, promoting it or educating both men and women within the community, so that you are challenging norms that menstrual hygiene is all about girls, but it's something that we need to talk about, introducing it to the boys in schools, so then they're able to support the girls along the way. So those are some of the gender transformative ideas that you can incorporate. If it is in the community where we are saying maybe we want to construct the latrines in the community, again, we need to ensure that we're involving women and men in selecting the construction sites. If it's a public latrine, maybe it's a latrine in the market, it needs to be in a location that, again, men and women feel comfortable and safe. When you're coming up with these designs, again, you need to be respectful and to be aware of the cultural and the religious preferences which are related to the latrine design, the use and location. So being aware is important, but again, as we remember, we said some things, if they do not make sense or they need to be challenged, again, we need to challenge, but it's also important to try and see, to understand the cultural also dynamics and the preferences of the community members and accommodate that as much as possible, while also challenging what needs to be challenged. Like I said, we need to educate everyone. We need to ensure there's proper lighting of latrines, especially in the public places. So basically, when you'll be writing the strategies and the activities, these are things that needs again to come out. So when you talk about sinking the boreholes, and then you're explaining the activities, so there'll be maybe the project is going to do 1, 2, 3. As part of it, you include all these considerations. You bring them out so that when Adonna is reading, they're not just reading, you're going to sing a borehole in the community, but it's a borehole that is going to be located in a space that women feel safe. You're going to involve women. That's a discussion, again, that has to come out very clearly under each and every activity. So this exercise is very important. Write your strategies, your key strategies on the right side using an Excel sheet. Discuss how you can some of the gender considerations that can be integrated within your project, and you'll be amazed at how much there is that you can do on gender considerations and gender integration. Okay, our last part is on monitoring and evaluation. So when it comes to monitoring and evaluation, the starting point, one key activity that you should always remember is the need to conduct a gender analysis, because this helps us to really understand the community, the gender dynamics in the community. So here I'm just going to share with you some of the examples of indicators that you can track so that you're able to come up with gender responsive data collection methods. So some of the indicators that you can consider is, for example, based on our example, is proportion of girls and women stating that they feel safe when accessing water. So within your project, you're going to ensure that you're collecting data from women. Maybe after you've done the borehole, you need to do an exit interview. Even before it's constructed, you need to go collect some data, focus group discussions with women. And then during the project period, again, you are asking questions. You want to find out, are they safe? How do they feel about it? A proportion of women who are in the water user committees, who look at time saved by women and girls due to improved access to water and sanitation facilities, which could be spent on education, income generation, leisure, taking care of children. So measuring that, if possible, depending on your capacity, would be very interesting to see how much time women are able to save and contribute to other important issues in the community just by making sure that the water point is near them. Again, you can look at proportion of women-led households with latrines at their premises. If we have many households which are women-led, we want to make sure that they are not left out. So by giving that proportion is important to our programs to make sure it's acceptable. Percentage of public facilities, maybe whether it's in schools or healthcare centers, with gender-responsive sanitation infrastructure, including separate and private facilities for women and girls. So, yeah, so these are some of the examples of the sample indicators. But of course, like I've said, this is based on WASH program. It's actually based on something that I have recently worked on. But if you want me to discuss on any specific topic, maybe you want me to discuss on maybe in HIV sector, you can integrate gender, just leave a comment and I'm going to try my best and make sure that I respond to that.